Tonight we feature a Eurovision extravaganza, including this little communist doom goblin.
Here to show that we think it is outrageous and inexcusable for Eurovision to let Israel participate while committing a genocide.
Let's bring in Sky News contributor Prue MacSween. Prue, it's stunning to see Greta so effortlessly go from science expert to Middle East expert while wagging years of school. She really is quite an impressive young woman.
She just sort of comes out of the woodwork and lays claim to know everything about everything, when in fact she's totally unemployable. She's got questionable intelligence, and she is a goblin. She's a bloody public nuisance, absolutely.
Well, you know what? I would ignore her input, except she has such a profound influence on young people. And we see so many young people suffering from things called climate anxiety now. People are in treatment. I've spoken to psychologists on this program who are dealing with these traumatised kids who've been convinced by the likes of Greta that the world's ending and they have no future, and that they're experiencing all this trauma unnecessarily. So we do have to pay attention to what she's up to. But let's talk about a significant win today for Elon Musk and X at the federal court, where a temporary order by Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julian Grant, to block Australians from viewing footage of the alleged terrorist stabbing attack of Sydney Bishop Mari Emanuel, that has now been refused. Prue, this request from the e-safety commissioner wasn't just blocking Australians. This was wanting the footage to have be banned globally, a takedown order with global implications, which is absurd. The power trip this woman must be on. Barrister Brett Walker, representing X, told the court that the reasons supplied by the e-safety commissioner to support this takedown order looked informal under the Administrative Appeals Tribunal Act. And he also said there are strong reasons to doubt the validity of the notice. This is, again, it shocks me that so many in the media are enthusiastically supporting what amounts to censorship here.
Well, this is the problem. It's a huge play by this government. We're seeing it in South Australia as well, where they want to control everything we see, read and hear. And I am so glad that this judge has knocked this out of the park. This woman, Julian Grant, has a vendetta, as we know, against Twitter, which was her former employer. And the fact that she was going to try and impose her views on the world, and that's what it would have happened, as the judge said, was totally insane.
Oh, absolutely. And as Elon Musk himself pointed out a couple of weeks ago, you could have any government anywhere in the world have a similar order requesting footage be taken down, and every country would have to abide by it if this set some sort of a precedent. I mean, that's just madness. And we should also point out, as it was pointed out in court, that the alleged victim in all this, the Bishop Emanuel, doesn't want this footage to be banned from social media or from X. So that was also something that was mentioned in court. Prue, South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas has announced his government is examining a ban on children under the age of 14 from having social media accounts. He posted this on social media site X. This nation-leading move will see former Chief Justice of the High Court, Robert French AC, tasked with examining the legal, regulatory and technological pathways for the state government to impose a ban, while also giving due consideration to the constitutional framework. Two things here, Prue. One, it sounds unenforceable. I don't know how they're going to enforce this for kids who can run rings around all of us when it comes to social media and technology. And two, shouldn't this be a parental decision as opposed to a government one?
Well, these are the grand gestures that Labor loves to make. And as you say, it's totally unenforceable. How can they possibly do it? And secondly, we are sick of parents being disempowered. I mean, we have this situation where we are seeing kids, boasting and posting, fights and things like that at school. And part of the problem is that teachers are not allowed to discipline children anymore and supervise them to the extent that when I was going to school, I mean, I would never have dared do something like this. So we have parents disempowered. They can't complain about the fact that there's no discipline and rules in schools. And we have, this nanny state situation where the politicians think they can go into a kid's bedroom and tell them and determine what they can and cannot watch. I mean, it's not going to happen. We do know that social media has very dangerous implications when it comes to young minds. We've witnessed that with radicalised kids, etc. But in the end, it's up to the parents to impose restrictions on their kids. Instead of trying to be a friend with your kid, take the phone away. If they're going into their bedroom at night, they do not need their device with them, for goodness sake. So, parents need to start parenting.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't be against having some sort of a ban in schools, in class and lunchtime and recess. Just if you're in school, you don't have your phone unless it's some sort of an emergency. I think that would be widely supported, and that's something you could actually enforce. But
Exactly.
yeah, what they're talking about here, I think, is fantasy land. Now, it's taken a while, but finally some acknowledgement that the way Victoria Police treated anti-lockdown and vaccine mandate protesters during COVID was a violent use of excessive force. In the county court, Judge Liz Gaynor ruled police were the aggressors during an anti-lockdown protest in May 2021. And in her stinging judgment, the judge ruled that the arrests were unlawful, and she called the response from the police immediate and violent, saying, "I'm satisfied that police were the aggressors in the situation and they employed unjustified violence." Prue, there are now calls for the police to be perhaps investigated and charged. And I think we're going to hear a lot more about this because these cases are now finally before the courts and the evidence is being examined, including body cam footage.
Well, I'm not an apologist for the police, and I think they have totally overstepped the mark, and they were aggressors and incredibly violent. But we have to point the finger at Andrews, the Premier, because it's a psychological thing almost that he empowered them. He was ruling that state with an unreasonable iron hand. He was demanding measures that were absolutely an infringement on people's human rights. And I suspect because the police force in Victoria was and still remains a very big political arm of the premiers of the state, and they were empowered by Andrews to do this aggressive enforcement. So he's to me as culpable as the police who did seriously overstep the mark.
Oh, absolutely. We need a royal commission with everybody to answer questions, including the state premiers. Now, the budget, you're not going to escape a budget question, Prue. I know you thought you were going to, but it's tomorrow night, and the Australian Financial Review notes that Treasurer Jim Chalmers is breaking from the market-based economic model favoured by the Hawke and Keating governments that helped deliver years of national prosperity. John Keogh writes, Jim Chalmers is ripping up the economic textbook. The Labor Treasurer is embracing a bigger role for government to direct capital and allocate resources. But Prue, how can a government that, let's be frank here, has next to zero business experience pick out winning projects to back with our money?
Well, we've already seen that they are totally inept at it with this Future Made in Australia, and we have, the $1 billion into the solar panels when we know there's a glut of solar panels and that China and many other countries can produce them much cheaper than we could possibly ever do. And then we've got this very questionable tendering process over the PSI quantum allocation of another $1 billion. I mean, they're not demonstrating that they have any prowess at doing this. And as you say, I mean, Chalmers and co have never had any business experience. They don't understand market forces. Keating and Hawke certainly did, and that's where this country was, really reinvigorated. And these fools, these arrogant fools who think that they are going to be able to pick the winners with our money, and with, of course, the union power of the super fund money, which, God help all these people who are in industry funds, because your money is going to be invested in loser businesses, and this country's going to go down the toilet. And he keeps saying, Chalmers, that he knows better than the RBA that we are going to have inflation down to 2 or 3% by Christmas. Give us a break. I mean, the man is, he did work for Wayne Swan. Wasn't he the universe's greatest treasure? And he never, ever produced a surplus. And this is the guy who worked for him. So God help Australia is all I can say.
Yeah, I think Wayne Swan promised us 4 surpluses, but I don't think he actually delivered one at all.
No.
But yes, we'll see how we go here. But it's just, we do not need an expansionary budget in the current environment. The last thing we want is the Reserve Bank spooked with inflationary pressure and rates remaining high or even going up further. Now, speaking of Paul Keating there, I don't know if you caught this story in the Sunday Telegraph. Annette Sharp reporting there that the former Labor Prime Minister, who is now 80 years old, has found love with a 30-something Polish waitress. Got to hand it to Paul Keating. No one ever said he was boring, Prue.
No, well, there must be some life in the old boy yet, unless they just wind clocks together and talk about art or something. I don't know. But good on him. At least it might keep him off the media trail and, throwing grenades at various people as he loves to do. And of course, cozying up to China. It's interesting that, does Poland and China get on? I'm not quite sure.
Well, yes. The less he says about China, the better, I think, for all of us.
Yes.
Now, let's go to the US, where a small number of students at Duke University staged a walkout, a very loud walkout, in protest of Jerry Seinfeld's appearance at their commencement ceremony. You can see them there getting up and leaving. I doubt Jerry really was too fussed about this. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
My point is we're embarrassed about things we should be proud of and proud of things we should be embarrassed about. So on my staff in the 90s, we had a lot of Harvard guys. They were fantastic, but I could never understand why these guys were so embarrassed about being from Harvard. They would never talk about it. They would never mention it. I'm not talking about Harvard now. I'm talking about the way it used to be. You're never going to believe this. Harvard used to be a great place to go to school.
Prue, he told them not to be ashamed of their privilege and to maintain a sense of humour. And I think that's very good advice indeed.
Well, definitely. But clearly they were humourless. And if they didn't, really celebrate the fact that Jerry Seinfeld, who's one of the greatest comedians and, I think social anthropologists we've seen, I think it's pretty pathetic that they walked out. Just shows how juvenile and how dumb they really are.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it was, with Duke University, a small but loud minority. When you look at the numbers who actually got up and walked out, a few of them had banners and they looked... they were in the dozens, not their hundreds. So I guess that's a positive sign. Prue MacSween, thank you so much.